Traitors must die!
Hello friends! Well, I'm the Dyslexic Cosplayer, and it's time for us to take another look at Robotech. Today we'll be starting with episode 10, Blind Game. After a recap of the previous episode, we cut to the spies delivering the report to Britai and Exidor, and it seems that they're having some trouble articulating what it was they experienced.
They were wearing these little military costumes.
And looking at them just gave me this strange feeling I can't explain.
It's okay. It's called puberty. Most humans go through that. Except for me. You can tell because my voice squeaks like a mouse when I talk. It's pretty clear. Matthew Mercer? Sam motherfucking Regal? See, I can make jokes about myself. It helps keep me humble. Exeter and Britai are concerned about the situation and are not entirely sure what their next course of action is. Not a surprise when members of your crew are fighting amongst themselves trying to understand what happened. Britai orders them to all go take cold showers while he tries to figure out their next action. We cut back over to Rick and his squadron fighting the Zentradi, when Ben Dixon takes a hit and starts leaking fuel. I thought these things ran on nuclear power, which is how they can fly in space, but whatever. So Rick orders them back to base. Lisa Hayes is not impressed with his command decision.
If the plane is not damaged too severely, Lieutenant, I would prefer that your group remain in position.
I'll be the judge of that. I'm the leader, and I'm responsible for the safety of my men.
So normally I would wait to give my thoughts on this until the end of the episode, but I just have to go over that real quick here. On the one hand, Rick has a decent point. He is responsible for the lives of his men, and he has to do what's right. On the other hand, the approach he is using to try and convince a superior officer what to do and not to do lacks enough tact, subtlety, and respect for the chain of command that it's a wonder that he manages to make it to the end of the series without being court-martialed. The only reason I even bring it up is because some of the dialogue gets reused later in the episode to try and make a point. But with Roy's help, Rick once again avoids court-martial and comes back to base. Meanwhile, back over with Chiron, he continues to prove to be the greatest villain of the series! Because he's been ordered by Britai to launch a warning shot at the SDF-1. I'm not sure why you would use warning shots when you're actively shooting each other, but whatever. But, of course, Chiron being Chiron has figured out a way to accidentally redirect the shot at the radar tower, thus blinding SDF-1 and making a much more effective terror statement than if he had just aimed over their bow. Ugh. And once again, we're back to Rick and Min-May's relationship. Now, I just want to be clear, I don't actually have a problem with Rick or Min-May's relationship. I really don't. It's just for so much of the series, their relationship goes nowhere until taking off like Buckaroo Banzai's jet car. Speaking of which, I should do a review of Buckaroo Banzai. The only pertinent element of this particular part of the episode is discussing the fact that Min-May's become so busy with her responsibilities that trying to maintain a relationship for the two of them has become very hard. Back over with the Zentradi, they end up blowing up a small planetoid to surround SDF-1 with particulates to confuse their radar, before Chiron fires his warning shot and destroys the radar tower. Now half blind and forced to take stock of the situation, Lisa ends up noticing a pilot who was out while the ship was being bombarded by chunks of rock that was inadvertently killed, which somehow traumatizes her enough to reflect on Rick's words from earlier in the episode.
And the smallest damage could prove to be fatal, and while you might feel perfectly safe gambling with our lives when you're safe and sound at your control desk, I'm not about to put my men in that kind of jeopardy.
So, okay, brief tangent. I'm not in the military. I don't have any family in the military. I have quite a few friends that are active and ex-military. And from what I've learned from them, you are trained to accept the fact that people are going to die when you join. I'm not entirely sure why this one instance has shaken her confidence so utterly, but whatever. Like I said, this is bad character development. While over in good character development, Britai and Exeter show that they actually can be strategic, since they intend to try and use this situation to their advantage. Like correctly assuming that they would send out a reconnaissance plane to try and find a way out of the new asteroid field that they had created, and being able to lure away the patrol that is sent out to protect the reconnaissance flight, in this case Rick and his friends, allowing them to capture Lisa Hayes and bring her aboard alive for interrogation. Rick and his cohorts attempt to rescue Lisa Hayes, which seems to be going fairly well, until Britai finds out that they're on board his ship, and it seems that Britai is a fan of kung fu movies, flying in like an utter badass and going toe-to-toe with them even without a suit of armor. It takes Ben blowing a hole in the side of the ship and Max managing to force Britai through the hole to suck him out into space to get him off their back. However, fun fact, it turns out Britai went to the General Grievous School of Badassery, since he's able to move around on the outside of the ship without any sort of suit. Not only that, but he comes back for round 2 and nearly KOs Rick with a piece of the ship, leading to episode 11, First Contact.
You are commanded to stay tuned for the return of Robotech.
For the first minute and a half of the next episode, we watch as Britai goes to town on Rick and his cohorts. As the fight progresses, it's obvious the Zentradi did not choose the pacifist option to becoming an intergalactic civilization, utterly destroying Rick's Battloid and actually surviving it blowing up in his face while Max is sucked out into the void. And it did not go well. Both Rick Hunter and Ben Dixon are now prisoners along with Lisa Hayes. So in some clever setup for the next episode, we find out that the Zentradi do have females, but they are kept strictly separate from the males, so there is almost no male-female contact. Kind of like my love life. Eventually, they all wind up waking up, and we get a wonderful moment to see that for all that Rick has grown some as a character, he also has some tendencies that he has to work on.
I'm sorry, Lisa. I really don't mean to be coming down on you this way. But it seems to me that sometimes certain assignments shouldn't be given to women. I mean, they're just too difficult.
So yeah, this is Jacqueline Cochran. She was a pilot during World War II, managed to set world records for the 100-kilometer and 2,000-kilometer international speed record, and also earned herself the title of Outstanding Woman Pilot 4 years in a row. She was also the first woman to break the sound barrier in 1953. This is Maria, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that last name. She lived in Russia. Her husband was killed fighting against Germany near Kiev on August 1941, after which she joined the Red Army, became a fully qualified tank operator, fought in numerous engagements, often affecting repairs on her tank while under fire, earning the respect of her commanders and the rest of the Red Army. And who may or may not have been the inspiration for the Heroes of the Storm character, Sergeant Hammer, who I may or may not main regularly. So please, Lieutenant Hunter, tell me what are some assignments that are just too difficult for women to take on? Or as Lisa Hayes herself would observe,
I can do anything you can do.
In fact, watching them fight makes Britai almost as ill as I am by that level of chauvinism. It's interesting that apparently the Zentradi are somehow adversely affected by basic human interactions. In an attempt to understand that, Britai warps his ship back to the command center for the very Zentradi fleet he's part of, and their supreme leader, Dozer. We get Rick and Minmay angsting about not being able to see each other for a full 2 minutes! That does nothing for the episode. In plot relative stuff, they do finally arrive at their destination and see the full might of the Zentradi fleet. And it is stupid big. While they're being dropped off there to be interrogated, we cut over to Max, who's been wandering around the ship after being sucked outside in the explosion that should have killed Britai. And in some Scooby-Doo level shenanigans, he ends up acquiring a Zentradi uniform and proceeds to wander around the ship now properly disguised. I mean, this is just silly and I kind of absolutely love it for it. In plot relative stuff, we get to see the spies delivering their message. Also, they've decided to make Exeter a Smurf for a little bit. But we also get to meet Supreme Commander Dozer and...
No!
I'm sorry, but when I imagine the supreme leader of the Zentradi, I don't imagine something that looks like an escaped DBZ villain. Eventually, they get down to interrogating Rick and his companions. As part of their opening gambit, they decide to flatten the surface of a planet, utterly devastating it and removing all signs of life, just to make it clear how badly SDF-1 is outclassed. With that out of the way, Dozer demands that the humans explain how they create more of themselves. calling them Micronians once again. Rick stating the obvious.
We're born into this world as Micronians.
Born, did you say?
Yes, but born from what is the question?
Well, when a mommy and daddy love each other very much... And that's where Cabbage Patch Kids come from. But in all seriousness, apparently the Zentradi have no experience with physical intimacy, going so far as to demand that the humans demonstrate for them. That doesn't go well.
Now, listen, Lieutenant Hutter, I want you to kiss me.
Huh? Right then, but why don't you do it with Ben?
Because I'd rather do it with you, Rick.
Then you'd better make it a command.
Rick, frankly, you're such a loathsome human being. This is probably the only way you'll ever get kissed by a woman voluntarily. But nevertheless, the Zentradi reaction to the display is borderline terrified.
Take them out of here! Get these Micronians out of my sight at once!
Fortunately for Rick and his cohorts, as they're being escorted back to their oversized cell, Max happens to see them and plans to help free them. So in an interesting conference room scene, we learn that the Zentradi used to be the same size as humans, and used to live in an integrated society like humanity. However, with the use of proto-culture, they were able to evolve beyond that. And this also may or may not have been due to a war with humanity. That's part of why they don't have male and females integrated into a society together anymore. It's a little vague. And we round out the episode with Min-Mei performing back on SDF-1. It doesn't really add much other than showing her as a growing celebrity, I guess. Anyway.
You are commanded to stay tuned for the return of Robotech.
We start off episode 12, The Big Escape, with the obvious previously on bit. We cut back over to Rick and his cohorts trapped in their cell trying to figure out how to get out of here. In the immortal words of Captain John Sheridan from Babylon 5, every prisoner's first duty is to try and escape. Rick suggests that since the Zentradi all universally seem to react negatively to humans interacting physically, perhaps they can use that to distract the guards when they come to deliver food long enough for them to escape. Although I'm a little suspicious this isn't a plan on his part to try and kiss Lisa again. Back over in the conference room, the only logical plan to Britai and Dozer's mind is to send spies aboard SDF-1 in an attempt to understand how much they know of protoculture. The three agents that we've dealt with previously, for personal reasons of their own as well as military duty, volunteer to be shrunk down to human size and sent over as spies. Back over with Rick and his cohorts, Lisa seems to have warmed up to the idea of kissing Rick, if only to complete the mission. They decide to give this a try, which works. However, it also turns out that the Zentradi that's come to deliver their food is actually Max, so it was probably unnecessary. But hey, they're rescued. Time to make an escape. Until that goes sideways.
Hey, you there! Hold on a minute!
Uh-oh!
What, Max? Are you telling me that your Scooby-Doo level antics didn't work out? Shocker! This all ends up going about as well as you might expect, including Max finally having to turn back into a Guardian mode version of the Battloid to make his escape.
Sir, the prisoners have escaped. Where are they now then? What is that sound? Exodor, remind me to fire that soldier.
Well, they make it to the elevator, but Max's plane has taken too much damage and it's about to explode. So they have to make a hasty escape while separating once they get to the ground floor. It's almost like making giant converting planes that run on nuclear power and jet fuel is a bad idea or something. And what a coincidence! Lisa and Rick have wound up in the same room where those Zentradi spies are being shrunk down to human size. Yeah, that's a testament to how much control you have over your own genetic makeup if you're able to go from that big to that small with no adverse effects. I'm sorry, the finest bit of comedy in this episode is the poor Zentradi foot soldier that has to sweep up all the broken glass. I love it. But it would seem that Doza does not appreciate the humor of the situation and has decided to demote Britai to staying here while his role of commander on the patrol that's keeping an eye on SDF-1 will be given instead to Commander Azonia. But don't worry, friends, Britai will be back, never you fear. While in the armory, Rick and Lisa Hayes discuss what it is they've just seen, completely unaware of somebody creeping up on them. Discussing about how, obviously, because they've mastered their ability to control their own genetic manipulation, that's why the Zentradi are so big and powerful. This may be what they're talking about when they keep referring to protoculture. But the philosophizing gets put on hold as Lisa's picked up by one of the Zentradi. You know, the frequency of which this happens starts to make me question whether this isn't one of the animator's fetishes. But in a moment of actual thrilling heroics, Rick uses one of the Zentradi guns, Gulliver's Travel style, to put down the Zentradi and free Lisa. However, as they attempt to make good their escape, they end up falling through the floor. And that's the last we'll see of them, I guess. But no, that was just the requisite cliffhanger for the commercial break. Fortunately, they've fallen into a giant pool of water, which seems to be a result of a broken pipe. Though Rick was apparently unconscious, Lisa was able to drag them to shore and save his life. As they recover from the fall, Lisa actually puts forward an interesting hypothesis. This is the reason they want SDF-1. The Zentradi don't actually know how to repair their own technology. They can build it, but they don't understand how it works other than how to use it. Kind of like how even children can use a DVD player, but even adults don't always understand how the laser works to translate the digital images into video. I question how she's able to come up with that entirely on her own, but I do like it helps expand the Zentradi into being big children with giant pop guns rather than an empire of evildoers for the sake of evil. It's also here we get some great humanizing bits with Lisa, expressing the trials and tribulations of becoming a command officer, and the stress that comes with that, which I definitely like. She also makes some comments about Rick and Min-May.
What makes you ask about her?
You were crying out her name. Min-May, Min-May.
Lisa, don't encourage him. That's called being a stalker. But nevertheless, the two of them resolve to try and escape no matter what. We cut back over to the spies, now shrunk down and clearly dressed for a performance of Jesus Christ Superstar. While back over with Lisa and Rick, not only have they managed to find their way to somewhere useful, but coincidence of coincidence, Ben and Max have managed to find them. I would say this is patently ridiculous, but it's pretty clear that the DM is just trying to get the party back onto the main campaign. Since not only is the ship they've decided to smuggle themselves aboard the one that Azonia will be taking to SDF-1, but they're also able to steal themselves a walker and fly themselves over to SDF-1, not being shot out of the sky, managing to communicate with Morse code to SDF-1, and they are rescued. I'm glad this is basically where the episode ends. Next! So this, for all intents and purposes, three-parter, managed to stick in my memory far better than a majority of the rest of the series. True, Blind Game can be a little slow going, and I'm definitely not a fan of trying to make Lisa look like a fragile ingenue when really she's kind of a badass. And yes, I recognize women can be vulnerable at times too and still be badasses, but come on, doesn't feel natural, and it's clearly there to make Rick look better at the expense of Lisa Hayes' character, and that's just never a good idea. Not helped by a largely unimportant subplot about a micro camera that Lisa smuggled aboard with her, which when broken leaves her so emotionally devastated that she's ready to have Rick leave her behind because she's failed her mission so badly. I mean, it's just kind of out of nowhere and dumb. But the ever-present threat of the Zentradi being able to do a reverse Genesis device on an entire planet provides some good tension and raises the stakes naturally. Also, Azonia's second-in-command delivering the spies aboard SDF-1 is kind of awesome and provides some great plot threads that we'll follow up on later. Containing some good foreshadowing, strong female characters, it's just great. Well, that brings us to the end of this review. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll hope to see you here again next time for our next look at Robotech.
Glory to the Zentradi. My name is Commander Bretai. And if you wish to show your support for this series, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Dyslexic Cosplayer. Also consider checking out his Patreon. Though our culture does not understand the idea of art or creativity, we find it most fascinating. All requisite tactical links will be found in the description below.